Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I have another episode of My Week in Perfume for you guys. It's been disgusting outside, hence the thumbnail. So I thought this week, because it's so hot and humid, I would just test some different scent profiles in the humidity and just see if I notice any differences in terms of like how they behave and how I enjoy them. I always think it's interesting when people talk about how weather affects your perception of a fragrance and your enjoyment of a particular fragrance. So I did have some weird instances with a few of these particular fragrances this week. So if you enjoy, be sure to hit the like button, hit the sub button, let me know your scent of the day in the comments section, and let's get right into it. So on Monday, this pretty much started the humidity and heat session. I wore L'Instant de Guerlain Pour Homme. This is the Eau de Toilette. So this is basically like a spicy, citrusy patchouli, but it's quite light, so I figured I would test this out. This just kind of doesn't work in the hottest of heat, or I think it is actually the humidity that kind of knocked this one down a little bit. I don't think patchouli and humidity work very well together. If you think about it, patchouli is sort of musty and dank and earthy. The patchouli in this isn't exactly like the most in-your-face patchouli ever, but combined with the humidity, I don't feel like this had like the cutting through effect like the next fragrance I'm going to talk about actually had on Tuesday. But in terms of whether or not I love this, or this is a fantastic fragrance from Guerlain. It's actually one of my favorites from the entire brand. I think it's probably one of the best things they've released in the past 25 years. Up there with Heritage and all those sorts of things. One of the last really fantastic Guerlains, in my opinion. But yeah, that was L'Instant de Guerlain Pour Homme, the Eau de Toilette on Monday. On Tuesday, I mentioned this one really cut through the heat and humidity. And my hypothesis was that is exactly what would happen with this, because this is a citrus fragrance. This is by Parfum d'Empire. This is Azemour Les Orangers. You can probably guess by the name, this is an orange fragrance. It's definitely a citrus sort of chypre construction. Has this really, really rindy, bright, realistic orange that's transparent and super, super fresh. Then you have more of like a green base, and then I get a little bit of spices and some herbaceous touches. But this worked fantastic on Tuesday when it was disgusting outside. You know, just 10 sprays of this on clothing and all that sort of stuff. It just always lingers, and it has this kind of cooling effect. And I find citrus fragrances and also mint fragrances do tend to have that sort of feeling. Obviously, it's not doing anything to your actual temperature. It just sort of feels nice, and it's nice to experience while you're wearing that. So if you're looking for a really, really good orange fragrance, Azemour Les Orangers by Parfum d'Empire is really hard to beat, in my opinion. Okay, on Wednesday, I went for something entirely different and way heavier. It was a little less hot and humid on Wednesday, but it was still pretty bad. But I went for this. This is Amouage Lineage. This is a beast. This stuff is really, really potent. Wow, though, I love it. Surprisingly, this worked really well. And this is a creamy, marine, inflected incense. It has a bunch of different types of incense. There might even be like copal in it, if I remember correctly. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but it is this sort of musky, creamy incense. It has a little bit of a marine, salty edge. It doesn't really go like eggy or some people even say like seaweedy. It doesn't really go there ever. One thing about this fragrance, wearing it in the heat that really surprised me was just how much it fit and made sense. When I was wearing this, and of course, you know, I try to go on multiple walks a day, and I was sweating and all that sort of stuff. When I was smelling it in the air, it didn't come off to me as like a scent profile that wouldn't fit in that particular situation. And it just gave it the most insane trail and bubble of all time. So that was Amouage Lineage. Very, very strong. Okay, on Thursday, I wore something completely different yet again. This is an older Amouage. This is called Silver. Silver is, all intents and purposes, a very fresh, floral, slightly aquatic leaning fragrance. This is super clean, super fresh. This worked wonderfully in the heat and humidity. The heat brought out more of the floral inflections, and I actually got a little bit of indulge, like a little dirty floral aspect from this that I wasn't getting before necessarily. Or at least that's how I perceived it. Maybe I'm completely wrong. But yeah, this has a ton of what I perceive to be as like white florals, maybe some jasmine, maybe some not necessarily tuberose, but there are a lot of classic leaning white florals in here, in combination with your typical sort of amouage, maybe a light incense touch, maybe little spices, and then whatever, some like maybe slight animalic muskiness. But overall, incredibly fresh. Heat and humidity brought out maybe some slightly dirtier aspects of it, but it still worked incredibly well. So that was Thursday. All right, on Friday I wore, I think, maybe my first introduction to fougères ever. I remember blind buying this over 2 years ago at this point. But this is Penhaligon's Sartorial, guys. Apparently they've changed the presentation for this bottle. I don't know why, it looked great before, but this is one of Bertrand Duchaufour's masterpieces, in my opinion. This I wore in the heat, and I wanted to test it because I just wanted to see what would happen to the honey note in this, and also that sort of, pressed shirt, metallic lavender thing. Basically what happened is I was surprised that this didn't really change on me at all. I've worn this in every single season at this point, having owned it for a little bit, and of course I have fairly sizable dent in there for collection of my size. And this stays pretty linear, for me at least. Not necessarily linear, but the weather doesn't really affect it for me personally. It just sort of is this very stable experience. You get that sort of metallic lavender with the slight honeyed sweetness. It does have this steamy sort of feel, which is interesting. I feel like that's why it lends itself really well, in my opinion, to the hotter months more so than the colder months. But of course, I mentioned I've worn this in every season. I think it works in every season. It's sort of a signature scent worthy type of scent profile. That was Penhaligon Sartorial. My only Penhaligons, I want to like more from the brand, but I don't know. I've tried so many things, and I don't know. I'm not really connecting with anything. So, okay, moving on. Saturday, I wore one of my favorite Guerlains to wear in the heat, actually. This is Guerlain Neroli Outrenoir in this beautiful, beautiful bee bottle. If you don't know, you can basically get almost any Guerlain fragrance in a bee bottle, and they will send it to you. This is 125 ml. It is a stopper, so you do have to decant it into one of these, which they provide you, which is pretty cool, but also kind of inconvenient. This is more of like a showpiece to put on your shelf, in my opinion, but I love Guerlain. I wanted to have a bee bottle for, like, fanboy purposes. You know what I mean? I just had to do it. So Neroli Outrenoir is a Neroli tea fragrance with this sort of smoky inflection in the tea note. This really came alive in the humidity. I think this fragrance has a particular stickiness about it. Maybe that's not the right word, but there's definitely viscosity to this fragrance. And I think the humidity really takes this fragrance and it just makes it project a ton. I typically spray quite a lot with this because I don't perceive this to be like a beast mode fragrance. But yeah, Saturday I think was the hottest day of this week. And this was really, really strong and perceivable to me. The florals really, really came out. And the tea note had this green element to it, almost like this green bitterness that was really, really apparent in like the middle of the wear experience, more so than other times that I've worn this fragrance. So in the heat, I actually really, really enjoy this. It does project quite a lot though. It really jumps off the skin. At least that's how I perceive it. Okay, and today I wore a new addition to the collection. I mentioned this in the previous video where I talk about my recent fragrance discoveries. This was my first wear of Serge Lutens Fleurs d'Oranger. This is awesome. I really, really love this. Today wasn't too bad. I think it was sort of the most tame day out of everything. This is kind of a deceiving fragrance in terms of the name. The name is Fleurs d'Orangers, so you probably think, oh, it's like a boring, feminine-leaning orange blossom thing. No, this is a crazy fragrance, in my opinion. This is one of my favorite floral fragrances in my collection. Of course, I've worn like decants of it before buying this bottle, but this is an orange blossom fragrance, but it has a giant jasmine note in it, as well as cumin. So it's kind of fuzzy, it's heady, it does get a little bit indolic, but you do get that syrupy, fresh, clean orange blossom experience, slightly citrusy as well. This, in the relatively tame heat and humidity of today, was quite strong once again. It really becomes very heady. Like, it's a very strong white floral fragrance. You get that spiciness. It kind of reminds me of Oranger Sirocco a little bit, with the warm spicy combination and the orange blossom, but the jasmine completely changes the entire composition and really makes it a heavier sort of orange blossom scent, in my opinion, even though Oranger Sirocco is probably the heaviest orange blossom fragrance I've ever personally come across. Okay, so that is my week in perfume. Hopefully it's not as disgusting next week, and I can wear maybe a little bit of heavier stuff in the summertime like I like to. Except Lineage, of course. Lineage was ridiculous earlier. Alright, appreciate you guys watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to hit the sub button, hit the like button, and check out the gaming channel if you're not familiar with it. I do run a separate YouTube channel. This is technically my second YouTube channel. My other YouTube channel is completely different. That'll be in the description if you're interested. Appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.